Hi, Class 3. Hope you're all keeping well and keeping safe. So lovely to see you all virtually. I can't see your faces, of course, but you can see my lovely face somewhere in the corner of the screen. Just want to say a big thank you for the beautiful card that you got me a few weeks ago. When I opened it, when it arrived in the post, it put a big smile on my face. And of course, a big thank you to your parents as well. They've been absolutely wonderful and so supportive. So, and as you can tell, judging by the fact that I'm doing this lesson, it shows how much I miss you all very much. And thank you to Mr. Morris for allowing me to teach this last history lesson for the term. So for today's lesson, we're going to need our thinking caps. We are going to need a pencil, of course, to write. And we're going to need some paper or our workbooks. So I will give you, I will allow the adult in the room just to pause the video. So if you don't have any of those things, make sure you have them ready for this lesson now. Okay, so without further ado, let's have a look at our first slide. So what we're going to be doing is we are going to just do a quick recap of what we've learned about ancient Greece so far. So 5 questions scattered around what we've been learning about ancient Greece. So number 1, can you name a city-state in Greece? Number 2, what is the climate like in Greece? Number 3, what is the name of the wooden horse what is the name of the war with the giant wooden horse? Where is the Parthenon? And how did Alexander the Great change the world? So again, I'm going to just ask the adults in the room or Mr. Morris just to pause this part of the video, just to give the children, just to give you guys the chance to answer those. So you don't need to write down the question, just the answers, and let's see if you can get all 5 correct. Okay, wonderful. So here are our answers for today's lesson. So number 1, the city-states that we can remember are Athens. So Athens is, of course, the birthplace of democracy, where people can vote on laws and rules that can change. We also have Sparta, which is, of course, where boys at the age of 12 grow up to become soldiers, Spartan soldiers. And we also lastly have Corinth. So this one's one that people might not particularly remember, but this is going back to our black figure pottery painting. For number 2, the climate was very hot and very dry in Greece. In fact, it still is now, and it's a wonderful place to go on holiday. Number 3, the giant wooden horse is, of course, found in the Trojan War, and that was created by Odysseus, the most intelligent soldier in the Greek army at the time. And for number 4, the Parthenon, that can be found in Athens. So I'm going to pause for a moment with this one. Why was the Parthenon built? Yeah, well done. So it was a symbol of tribute to the goddess of Athena, which was the sponsor of Athens. Well, that's where the name comes from itself. And of course, number 5, I'm sure some of you may have some different answers for this one. Well done if you did. But for question 5, Alexander the Great had combined the great things about the Greek and the Persian civilizations. So I want you to remember the answer for question 5, because that's quite an important one to think about. Because what we do in the present as historians is we can make connections to the past. And sometimes, as a civilization like we are now, the UK, we take all the good things that comes out of our past or past civilizations. So let's have a look at this slide. So I've got up a picture of the solar system. So you're all probably wondering, why on earth has Mr. Ramos put up a picture of our solar system? It's not science, it's a history lesson. And for those of you who have been thinking that, you are right. I'm just going to give you a moment to just pause and think about what would be important about this particular part of our lesson. So why do you think this is related to history? Yeah, so well done. This one's a little bit trickier. For those of you who aren't sure, and for those of you who did actually figure this out, well done. It's a really good piece of knowledge to know. But for those of you who didn't know, the planets are actually named after the Roman gods. And interestingly, what the Romans did, which is what we're going to find out, is the Romans took good parts of Greece and kind of ingrained it into their own culture. So they kind of took an idea and said, well, we're going to copy that. So let's have a look at a few examples in the solar system. Let's start with Mars. So Mars is the Roman god of war. And who would be the Roman god of war for Greece? Yep, fantastic. So it is indeed Ares. And some of you, I'm sure, may have come out and said that Athena is also the god of war, goddess of war. And that one, of course, would technically be right. But for this part of the lesson, it's Ares. And let's move on to Jupiter. So this one's quite a fitting title of the planet because, of course, Jupiter is the biggest planet in the solar system. And of course, Jupiter in the Roman world is the king of the gods. And of course, who is the king of the gods in ancient Greece? I'll give you a clue. He tends to throw lightning down when he's angry. Yes, of course, it's Zeus. And then let's move all the way across to the very end. We also have Neptune. So Neptune is the Roman god of the seas, tends to hold a trident. Which god of ancient Greece does this belong to? Yeah, so well done. It is indeed Poseidon. And for those of you who really like your Greek mythology, there is a brilliant book series called Percy Jackson. In fact, I think it's in the school library. So if you get the chance to read that whilst you're at school, please do. It's a really interesting book series. And of course, I'm just going to draw your attention to two more planets. So ones that I find very interesting. Saturn is actually indeed a Roman god, and this is actually going back to ancient Greece. So Saturn is in ancient Greece is known as Kronos, which is the father of Zeus. And then if we look at Earth, which is the one that probably I find very interesting, is the goddess in the ancient Greek world was known as Gaia. So Gaia was the mother of all living things and the ground itself, and that essentially is why sometimes we call the Earth Mother Earth, and that's where it comes from. So moving on, we're going to be looking at, a bit like how Alexander the Great had done with Persia, the Romans. We're going to be looking at how the Romans took the best parts of Greece and kind of brought it into their own culture, and how that even impacts how we exist in the present day today. So, of course, we're going to be looking at the Roman occupation of Greece in 146 BCE, so before Common Era. So before we do that, I felt it was good to just have a quick look at our ancient Greek timeline. So it's not going to cover everything. I've just highlighted a few parts that I think would be just to give us a bit of a memory jog in terms of where the Romans come into this. So firstly, we've got 776 BCE, which is, of course, when the first Olympic Games were held in Greece. So pause this video and tell me some facts about ancient Greece. Well, the Olympics in particular. Yeah, well done. So the Olympics, of course, is a tradition that we've carried on even to today. So we hold our Olympics every 4 years. In fact, London also held the Olympics back in 2012. Some of you may have been quite little when that was happening. And then, of course, we also were supposed to have the Olympics last summer, but hopefully it should be this summer because of COVID. So the next one, of course, 700 BCE, approximately. Homer writes the Iliad. So where have we come across the Iliad before? Yeah, fantastic. So the Iliad is one of the poems that had written about the Trojan War. And as historians, we use that as a primary source to try and figure out if the Trojan War actually happened or not, which even to today, we're still not sure. So we're coming to 500 BCE now, which is the classic period. And this is when the Greeks became suddenly interested in art and pottery. And that is, of course, when black figure pottery came into existence. Then we have our next one. And then, of course, we also have Hippocrates, who is the father of modern medicine, and he was born in Kos. Let's have a look at that next one. Then, of course, this one probably being the most recent and significant memory that we have is Alexander the Great, who takes over Greece at the age of 20. A fun, interesting fact about Alexander the Great: he was never defeated in battle, and unfortunately, he did pass away. Well, died at the age of 33, which is very young for the ancient world. And then that, of course, takes us to where the Romans are today. So the Roman invasion of Greece. So what happened to Greece? What kind of situation did Greece have to be in to fall to the Romans? Well, if we think back to Alexander the Great's death, this brought the beginning of the end for ancient Greece. With no kind of unifying leader, Greece became divided again. And these greedy city-states kept fighting each other for power. And this, of course, made Greece much weaker to invasion. The Greeks were still influential when it came to accessing the Mediterranean Sea and trading different types of goods, such as copper and tin, to different civilizations, such as the Egyptians and the Persians. However, this, of course, caught the attention of a new empire that was rising. And this is, of course, the Romans. So the Romans were a new power in Europe. They came from Italy, and they were named after their capital city, Rome. So if we think back to our Trojan War lesson, the Trojan prince Aeneas, according to legend, the Trojan prince had fled Troy and helped found Rome, and then the descendants from those Trojans had helped found Rome and take their rightful revenge on Greece. Now, of course, we don't believe that this was obviously the case, but it's a good story to think about. And of course, with the Romans, they were a rising power in Europe, and they dominated their neighbors with their smart tactics, their strong and large armies, which could even match the Spartans themselves, and of course, a formidable navy as well. So the Romans seized upon the opportunity to take over a weakened Greece. They knew that Greece was still fighting among city-states and felt it was a perfect opportunity for them to take all the resources and land that Greece held at this time. And of course, in the Battle of Corinth, the Romans finally defeated Greece in 146 BCE. And of course, the world of ancient Greece had come to an end. So let's have a look at this particular map here. So this, all of the area that is marked in red, is the height of the Roman Empire. So the Roman Empire stretched all the way from Spain, all the way up to where Persia used to be, which is now modern-day Turkey, a little bit of North Africa, and then, of course, they even reached Britain. So some two interesting facts for you about this one. So, of course, Britain, well, the city that's closest to you, which is Chester, was actually founded by the Romans in 43 AD, so a few thousand years ago. And that is why, if you've ever been to Chester, that's why it has its city walls. So a little bit of history there for you. And of course, with this, for those of you who love your history or English, there's some words that you might pick up here, such as Egyptus, which is, of course, Egypt. We also have Hispania, Italia, Roma, and we have Britannia. And what we're seeing here, this is the language of the Romans, which was known as Latin. And what I love about the English language is that Latin was one of the languages that we absorbed. So whatever we speak and write, sometimes you may see that these words existed thousands of years ago with what the Romans used to write and speak. So whenever you're thinking about your spelling or looking at words, sometimes you may notice that it has a Latin history. So let's have a look at the Greek influence on the actual Romans themselves. So let's have a look at that particular picture there, and let's pause the video and tell me what you think about that particular temple. Yep, so some of you may have recognized that it may have been a Greek temple, but actually it's not. It's actually a Roman temple. And what the Romans did is, well, what the Romans had done is that they really appreciated how the Greeks had created their temples, which were dedicated to the gods. The Romans used the same Greek designs to build their own public buildings. Let's have a look at this one. So this is actually a art gallery, which is found in the Manchester city centre. So if you ever go to the city centre, hopefully in the summer, you'll notice that we are, even in the present day, we're still using the same techniques that the Romans and the Greeks used. So it's very important to know that the Greeks had left behind a very strong legacy. And of course, we also have the Greek influence on Roman art. So we know from our previous lessons in arts that the Romans had again copied the style from the Greeks in terms of mosaics. So the Greeks had started off the style for mosaics, which is of course when we slowly piece together pieces of stone and occasionally paint it in a certain pattern. And what wealthy Romans used to do is they used to put this on their floors or on the ceilings or on walls as a decoration. And of course, this again shows the Greek influence on Roman art. That being said, mosaics are still popular today. So again, if you do go to the city centre, you can also find mosaics of what's relevant to us today. So of course, you have Manchester United and Manchester City and famous football players on the right. And you also have famous Mancunians, so people from Manchester, and people who are famous on TV. So yeah, very interesting how we can still make reference to the past and even now see the legacy that the Greeks had passed on to us and the Romans and then ourselves. And then, of course, when it came to Greek mythology in Rome, we know that the Romans had, whenever they kind of encountered a similar god from Greece, they blended that god's characteristics with those of their own. So like this picture says here, hail Zeus, hail Jupiter, even though their god was exactly the same in all but name. So for an interesting fact for you all there, is that Aphrodite, the goddess of love, was actually known as Venus. So again, we're still seeing that the Greeks and the Romans still carried over mythology and storytelling, which is of course a very important thing to carry on, to pass on to the next generation. And even now, we still use myths of our own. So these are stories where we might think they're real, but we're not too sure. So we may not have had the ones to the extent of the Greeks and the Romans, but we also had our own in terms of Manchester. So let's have a look at the Midland Hotel. So you're probably thinking, well, it's just a hotel. However, the myth behind this particular building that I have learned, that I'm going to pass on to you, is that in World War II, Adolf Hitler, who was the leader of the Germans and the Nazis, had ordered his aircraft, the Luftwaffe, to not bomb the Midland Hotel because it was apparently he loved the building so much he wanted to take it down brick by brick and then rebuild it in Germany if they won the war. But of course, that is a myth. We're not too sure if that was actually a story. And again, that goes to show the admiration that this building has in Manchester. It's a very old building, very prestigious as well. And of course, this is where, whenever the Prime Minister would have his meetings in Manchester, this is where he would stay. So let's have a look at today's activity for today. So the key question, the key learning objective for today is, what legacy did the Greeks leave behind for today? So we also have our steps to success. So what I'd like you to do is to tick each step once you've completed it. So on the left-hand side, we have got, I can identify parts of ancient Greece. I can identify things that belong to the modern day. And I can identify common pieces of ancient Greece and the modern day. So things that theoretically can exist in both. So the way I'm going to ask you to do that is I have got together a word bank for you. So these words are the ones that I want you to look at and think about. And what I'd like you to do with those words is put it into this diagram. So with your piece of paper, I would like you to draw two giant circles just like this, and make sure you leave enough room in the middle. On the left-hand side, I want you to put what belongs to ancient Greece only with those keywords that we've just looked at. What belongs to both, and what belongs to the present only. Now remember, the one keyword can only exist in each, in only the one. So if I go back to the word bank, and I say fortnight, for instance, fortnight can only exist in the present. It cannot go in the other two. And of course, I'm sure you'll be able to explain that why fortnight doesn't exist in ancient Greece. So I do have an example for you as well, just in case you're still a bit unsure. So again, we've got three examples from the word bank that I've used. So we've got Achilles. So Achilles is of course an ancient warrior. We are not sure if he existed, but he existed during the time of the ancient Greeks. In terms of mathematics, this was something that the Greeks also did themselves. So when they learned to count and add and subtract, a bit like how we did. The only difference is that the Greeks didn't have a zero in their number system. So when we're learning about place values, such as our ones, tens, and hundreds, it's important to know that we use zeros. The Greeks didn't. So whenever they needed to work out a sum, they had no zero to help them with that. And then, of course, we also have Adidas, which belongs to the present only. I mean, it'd be great to see some ancient Greeks rocking a pair of Adidas trainers. I have a pair myself, but unfortunately, we know that Adidas didn't exist during ancient Greece. Now, if you finish that activity, I've got a challenge activity for you. So using the table as your guide, so think about those keywords that you could use in the work. I've given you a choice of two writing tasks, so you can choose one of them. So the first one is you are a time traveler. You've been transported into ancient Greece for one day. What is the one thing you're looking forward to doing or seeing? And can you make any comparisons to the present? The second one being is that you are a child from ancient Greece, which has been transported to the present for one day. What do you think they would look forward to seeing or doing? Can they make any comparisons to their own past? If you finish this, I would love for you to draw an illustration of this story. And for those of you who aren't too sure or a little bit stuck on the writing task, I have done a little example for you. So I've created a quick introduction. And remember, a story has to have those three key parts. It has to have an introduction, has to have a middle, and it has to have an ending. It's three important parts of what makes a good story. So I'm going to read you my example now. I hope you like it. You won't believe the kind of day I've had. I started my day walking down the coast. You know, I always love watching the waves brush against the rocks. I was heading down to the market to get some food for my family. We were going to watch a play that evening, which was about Achilles. So I was very excited. And then to my shock, I suddenly ended up face first in some mud. How in all of Greece did I get here? As I looked up, there was a strange land ahead of me. There was a vast amount of trees and hills in the distance. There was a towering building ahead of me, but not like the Parthenon back at home. It had these walls where you could see right through it. I also could see the children running around dressed in the same red and grey clothing. They were moving a circular object with their feet. I've never seen anything like it before. So again, I really hope that activity, that you enjoy that activity, class 3. But that's all from me. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson and that you enjoy the activities. I really hope you've enjoyed learning about ancient Greece, and it's been an absolute pleasure. So take care, guys. and hopefully I'll see you all very soon.